Hello and welcome to After Scientology Straight Up and Vertical. This is the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and we go over the week's events in the world of Scientology as reported on Tony's Substack. Hey, Tony, welcome back.
Thank you, Chris. As you can see, I'm on the road this week, but keeping things going and definitely more to check in with you.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. And I'm glad we're doing this week because there's a couple important things to talk about. This was not a, action-packed week, but there are some things that we need to highlight. So starting with, let's go ahead and start with the Superbowl and Tom Cruise. What was the story here?
Yeah, last week we were recording literally an hour before the start of the game.
Yep.
And we knew that it would be coming out after the game. And we said something about the fact that we don't know the result, but we had seen the ad. We knew what Scientology Super Bowl ad looked like.
Yep.
Well, what got as much reaction as Scientology's ad was that this 3-minute video the NFL did and showed right before kickoff of Tom Cruise. NFL does that. They're hype videos basically to get people all riled up for the game. Why Tom Cruise? They used him in the Olympics. Now, can't these big sporting events go off without this 62-year-old actor? I don't know. It seemed kind of ridiculous, but I got a lot of reaction. People were asking me about that. I didn't see any Scientology in the 3-minute video. It was more of kind of a little, come and hype up our football game, and we'll let you use the words mission and impossible about 4 or 5 times to promote your new movie. That's what that was really all about. But there's no doubt that this was, David Miscavige, leader of Scientology, would be thrilled to see Tom Cruise doing that. And also that we had talked about this, that listen, David Miscavige is from the Philadelphia area. He's a diehard Philadelphia Eagles fan. He would have been thrilled to see Tom Cruise hyping people up before the big game. And then, of course, he would have been thrilled to see the terrible blowout. I mean, that was I like both of those teams. I was looking forward to a good game. It was not a good game. It was a total blowout. But
Yep.
I'm sure that didn't bother Dave in the least. So what a day for Scientology. They got an ad that showed in some markets. They had Tom Cruise showing everywhere, and then the Eagles won. So it was pretty much a dream day for David Miscavige, as far as I can tell.
You're not wrong at all, and all of those points, and I'll just throw into the fire here the longer term look, right, which is the normalization of Tom Cruise, the normalization of Tom Cruise being a person who is now connected with sporting events. I mean, it did start with the Olympics, and now we have the NFL, and who knows, he could show up at the NHL playoffs or the NBA next, or the World Series. And people are going to think it's appropriate, right? A bunch of people are going to be like, "Oh yeah, Tom Cruise. Here's Tom Cruise talking again," and there's a status thing with that I know Scientologists are just eating up with this, right? It very, very much bolsters their belief when they see Tom Cruise being acknowledged on the world stage because Tom Cruise is them, as they see it, right? That's the value and power of celebrity for them. So let's not normalize that. Let's not do that,
Well,
folks.
I mean, the big thing is it's just very clear that he chose his loyalty to David Miscavige and the Church of Scientology
Yes.
over his own daughter. And it's really kind of scandalous that he did that. But he's, invited onto these things like it just doesn't matter with him. That tends to be a real problem for some other celebrities, but for Tom Cruise, no problem. And
Yeah.
it's just he single-handedly probably provides more positive image for the Church of Scientology than any other person. So it does matter.
Right. Yeah, it does. Um, okay, now there was a sad story. I mean, it's not entirely unexpected, but Neville Chamberlain passed this week, and you wrote a wonderful memoriam for him. You want to
Well,
talk?
yeah, he died a couple of weeks ago, and that was actually written by his wife Danielle. I had heard that he had passed away, and that several people were working on some really cool memorials. And I reached out to her and she said, I just said, can we just, let the public know? And she said yes. And she sent me that very nice remembrance of him. And I just noted that, Don Atack was going to be saying something and Alex Barnes Ross and Janet Gillett Grady, because Neville Chamberlain was one of the original people on the Sea Project that turned into the Sea Org in the late 60s and was right there around L. Ron Hubbard. And while Neville wasn't hugely visible after leaving Scientology, he did write some really interesting things about Hubbard under a pen name, under the name Darth Smohan. And that was really influential stuff back on the internet 20 years ago. And so he meant a lot to a lot of people. And I think I've seen what John Atack has written. I'm not sure if Alex published it yet or not. Really interesting stuff about who this guy was. And it's just another example. We're losing some really important people that witnessed some of Scientology's most important history. So it's a shame.
Big time, big time. I had a couple of private conversations with him, and he was a wealth of information. I am kicking myself that I did not go back and get more from that very deep well of knowledge and experience that he had with Scientology. There are very, very, very few original Sea Org members left to talk to from 1967, 68 time period. So anything you can find under his pen name or under him will be guaranteed to be very, very enlightening, interesting stuff about the history of Scientology. And he didn't really mince words when it came to L. Ron Hubbard either. He was pretty clear. He was no apologist for Hubbard or his abuses. Okay, now coming to the present now, we have a few stories that were posted this week, and this has to do with Scientology and the White House and our government. So some of this is kind of nightmare fuel, folks. Tony, take it away.
Yeah, so we knew going into the election that a couple of Trump's biggest supporters and fundraisers were OT Scientologists like Trish Duggan and Grant Cardone. Since the election, however, I've been waiting to see what that translates to. And the first thing that caught my eye was, I don't know, a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, one of these many executive orders that the White House put out said that they were going to fight anti-Christian bias. And I thought, well, that's interesting because, Trump is close to Trish Duggan and Grant Cardone and Scientology. I don't know. Are there still people that are confused and think it's some sort of branch of Christianity? In fact, Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard founder, was very harsh about other religions, in particular, Christianity in particular. So I decided to write a story and remind people that we hear him on tape, L. Ron Hubbard saying there was no Christ. And saying that basically the world's religions are all just made up fakery from Xenu, who implanted body Thetan 75 million years ago. And it's not just that story. I know one person was saying, Tony, that's just one story. No, I do this thing at my website called Source Code, where I quote Hubbard all through many years of lectures. And I found many times when he was very critical of religion, very critical of the concept of God. I don't think there's any question that Scientology, in Scientology, you are the God and you have fallen, and you just need to go through the processing to remember your whole track so you can become a God like Thetan. So that's what's really going on. And personally, I don't care if Scientologists want to believe that. That's not a problem. But when the White House is saying they want to root out anti-Christian bias, I just raised the question: does that mean the Church of Scientology might be in some trouble? And my answer is no, not at all, because it turns out not only was Trish Duggan one of Trump's biggest individual donors at $5 million in 2020 and 2024, but that she is part of this thing called the America First Policy Institute. And I know the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 gets a lot more attention, but both Politico and the New York Times wrote about the AFPI and said actually it's more fundamental to the plans for the second Trump administration. And in fact, the top people who run the AFPI have all ended up in Trump's cabinet. I mean, these are the people really planning what's going to be happening. One of the directors of the America First Policy Institute is Trish Duggan. The person who runs it is Linda McMahon, who's now going to be Secretary of Education. The CEO, the CEO of the FPI is this woman, Brooke Rollins, who's going to be the Secretary of Agriculture. And I found in their tax records that in the most recent year for tax records, 2022, they paid Pam Bondi $200,000 for advisory services. Now she's the Attorney General in charge of the Department of Justice. So all these people very close with Trish Duggan. So that was early last week. And then just a couple days later, Chris, we found out that President Trump had decided to make himself the chairman. He said he was elected, but he decided to be the chairman of the Kennedy Center. The Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. is this real premier performance space that's kind of the cultural capital of the United States. And Trump is now the chairman of it. And then he installed a lot of his folks as board of the trustees, including J.D. Vance's wife, Usha Vance, and various other people, and Trish Duggan. So not only has Trish Duggan been a director of this organization that has helped plan the Trump presidency, but now she is on the board of trustees with Trump to run the Kennedy Center. And of course, everyone's making jokes about what that's going to be like. And, you're going to have concerts with Kid Rock from now on. But whatever they decide to do, I don't really care. What's interesting to me, though, is how tight that relationship is between Trump and Trish Duggan. Then the very next day, I saw the news that a lot of the leaders came to Munich in Germany to talk about Ukraine, and the new Secretary of the Defense, Pete Hegseth, kind of stepped in it and said that as they're looking at trying to end this war between Russia and Ukraine could forget about getting its old borders back, and people were shocked. And then the next day, Reuters said a senior official said, no, everything's on the table. They might be able to get their borders back. And who was that senior official? John P. Cole. I hadn't even heard that John P. Cole had been named deputy envoy on the Ukraine matter. John P. Cole, of course, is somebody we've been watching for a long time, Chris. John P. Cole is now a sort of semi-retired attorney. He's married to Greta Van Susteren. They are both OT Scientologists. Cole got Greta into Scientology, and he goes way back with Scientology. When I talked to Lisa Marie Presley, for example, she told me it was John P. Cole who pressured her into divorcing Michael Jackson, and that it was clear to her this was being done on behalf of David Miscavige.
Yep.
So, I mean, Cole's got a real interesting history in Scientology. In 2021, after the election, after the January 6th thing, after Trump was out of office and Biden was president, Trump, with John Cole as his attorney, filed lawsuits against Facebook, Google, and Twitter over them banning him following the January 6th insurrection. And I wrote about it at that time, and I said, listen, folks, just point this out. Trump is now suing these technology companies with the help of John Cole, an OT Scientologist. Well, once Trump won again this past November, John Cole was able to put incoming President Trump and Mark Zuckerberg in a room together. And that produced a $25 million settlement of that lawsuit, which was part of this whole crazy month when people were wondering about Zuckerberg and his relationship to Trump and all that. But anyway, it was Cole that made that happen. And I think so his reward for helping Trump with these lawsuits against technology company was he's been made deputy envoy on Ukraine. So, look, I'm not making a comment about how the Trump administration is handling the Ukraine situation. I'm not making a comment on Trump's the decisions he's making on these various agencies. I just want to point out that this proximity of high-level, wealthy Scientologists in the Trump administration pretty much guarantees what Mike Rinder said right after the election, and that was, you will not see the Department of Justice do anything about the Church of Scientology in the next 4 years. So, I still see some people saying they think that maybe Trump could be convinced to go after Scientology. And I just don't see it. I just, he's got too many of these folks that are real close to him that he's very close with. And, all it's going to take is a word from John Cole or Trish Duggan and anybody who thinks about, and of course, Pam Bondi herself is close with Scientology. She's not a Scientologist, but she's very close with Scientology. And so I just don't see anything happening. And it's just, and Chris, we're not even a month into this second Trump presidency. So
Right.
who knows what's going to happen with this? And I'm curious to see what David Miscavige tries to do, because we know Scientology's been struggling. Scientology's had a very hard time with membership and all that. But without having to worry about the Department of Justice, what does that free up David Miscavige to do? So I'm curious about that.
Exactly. And there's one other thing I'm going to throw onto this because and this statement is informed out of what's already happened in Washington over the many decades with multi-level marketing schemes. Let me just connect these dots for a second, okay? Because there are many laws on the books against pyramid schemes and financially fraudulent businesses and business practices, and you can't get away with a whole lot of stuff unless you are very specifically a multi-level marketing company where exceptions have been carved out of the laws to allow that business model to continue where other predatory practices are prosecuted. And this has been the way it's been for decades now. And the way that happened was MLMs in the 70s and 80s getting cozy with government officials and legislators, just like Scientology is doing now, getting favors, throwing money around, however they went about doing it. They got exceptions carved into the laws. So the MLMs can basically do whatever they want. Now, I know all about this because this has everything to do with how cults work. The techniques of recruitment and retention in multi-level marketing is the same as they are in Scientology and other cults. So the practices are very predatory, very deceptive, and at the end of the day, they defraud the public. People lose millions and millions of dollars because of these laws that have been crafted to protect the multi-level marketing schemes. You wouldn't think it's like that until you get into the details and you see it's exactly like that. I've literally presented to the FCC about this and heard from them about it, right? This is something I do know something about. And I'm saying all of this because this is exactly the position Scientology wants to be in, where they don't have to worry about the law anymore because they get special exceptions carved into the laws. What does that look like? There's a million variations of it. We don't know what it's going to look like. But having people like this in the positions that they're in, where they are doing things for this administration, they are in positions of trust. And like I said, nightmare fuel, the Attorney General of the United States is a staunch Scientology ally.
Right.
So the ideas of what I'm talking about right now are not far-fetched fantasyland conspiracy ideas. It's very real that this is our immediate future when it comes to what Scientology could get out of these relationships. And these are staunch Scientologists, Trish Duggan, Grant Cardone, John P. Coles. These are people who have proven their loyalty to Scientology for many, 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 many years. So when David Miscavige calls, these are people who are going to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And these are people who, when they call Trump, he's going to pick up the phone. So you see the problem here, and I just wanted to outline it that clearly so you could see where some of our fears are, coming from with this. So that all being said, right, this isn't a matter of politics as such. It's a matter of power moves behind the scenes that can last a lot longer than any current administration. Right. So had to say all that and kind of let you all know what's really at stake here with this and why, even if this is an administration you support, this part of what's going on should be raising eyebrows at least. This is very, very dangerous connections with Scientology. So that all being said, those were basically the stories this week because a lot of that was wrapped up in
Well, there's more coming, Chris. There's more coming because I'm working on a story. Should come out soon. We got a lot. Okay, so we're talking about the Kennedy Center. We're talking about Ukraine. Another big part of the Trump administration this week, of course, was the confirmation of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. To lead the Health and Human Services, and right away, the White House put out an executive order, sort of listing all the things they want HHS to do under Kennedy. Man, it was like it was almost written by CCHR.
exactly.
And it's just wow. I'm gonna look at a little bit of that. I think there's some other people in the press looking at it as well. But wow, every day it seems like there's new stuff coming out of this administration, and it strikes me like, wow, Dave's gonna love that one.
That's right. No, it was reading RFK's stuff was like reading a Scientology wish list.
Yeah.
It really was, because everything they want and have been pushing for. And make no mistake, let me say this out loud for anybody who doesn't have the history we have with this, that the Church of Scientology has a specific extension unit of itself called the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, which has been around since 1969 and has had the blatant, very obvious goal, they're not shy about this, of
Right.
destroying psychiatry, literally removing it off the map so that Scientology solutions for mental health are the only thing that people have. That's what they want. And we know from experience, unfortunately, tragic experience, that Scientology is not only clueless about good mental health, they're actively destructive to people's good mental health. That's, I think, why you're here watching the show in the first place. So that's, these are it's nightmare fuel. So let's watch closely on this, because if you have a voice and you want to use it to let your government know that maybe this part isn't something you want, please do that. Please exercise your voice. All right. Tony, thank you for that preview of what's coming. And I, of course, am very, very curious about this America First Policy Institute as well. And it's something I want to dive deeper into, too. So, folks, you'll be hearing more about all of this. Tony, anything else you wanted to leave with for the week?
A story just came out today. I know some people may have seen an announcement that there's a new class action lawsuit against Church of Scientology. Bloomberg Law announced it Friday night, and I saw that people were getting excited. Oh, a class action lawsuit, because a lot of people seem to think that that's the best way to go after the Church of Scientology. And it was not immediately available. Bloomberg Law had kind of gotten a preview and just sort of teased it, and so I finally got a copy of it. And it's really kind of a copycat lawsuit. There's this law firm in Miami that's suing a lot of people, a lot of different online companies, from NBC to various other places. And what they're saying is, with these websites, like Scientology's website, like NBC's website, installs this thing called the Facebook, the Metapixel. And you and I could install it on our web blogs if we wanted to. And it's just basically a string of code that records video, among other things, the video watching habits of people at your website, and shares it with Facebook. It allows you to share information with Facebook to help you with your advertising. Well, this attorney in Miami is saying that's a violation of an interesting federal law. It's actually a very interesting law, dates back to 1988, when Washington City paper leaked a list of the videos that Supreme Court Justice nominee Robert Bork had rented from his local Blockbuster. And Congress didn't like that. It's like, that's a violation of his privacy. And so they wrote a law saying you can't share people's video watching, information. Well, people don't go to Blockbuster anymore. So that the law is a little bit out of date that way, but they're using it now with the way online websites share information with Facebook about what people are watching. And I'm not saying that's not a concern. That's fine. But the thing is, this guy's suing all these different companies. Scientology is just one of them. It's a cookie cutter lawsuit. There's almost no information about Scientology in the lawsuit at all. And I just was cautioning people it's going to be fun to watch Scientology defend itself. I don't, I think that's great. I think Scientology is going to have to spend money and resources to fight this thing. That's great. I just don't want people thinking that this is some great lawsuit going after Scientology's real controversies of extorting families or ripping families apart. It says almost nothing about Scientology. It just says their website has installed this metapixel thing and is sharing information with Facebook, and that's a violation of federal law. So, and again, it could be very interesting. I know people were curious, and I wanted to make sure people understood that that's what it was.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, I was meant to bring that up. So thank you. Good. All right, folks. So you heard it here first. Okay. So listen, right there on the screen is Tony's Substack address. Okay. And as I say every week, connect up, get subscribed, get your daily notifications, right? Find out what's going on, and then check back in with us for the weekly wrap up on Mondays. And with that, I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.